Hi, my name is Tal Zahavi from Rochester, New York, and I got accepted to the University of Chicago, and I'm here to talk about the application process. So, to every school, you send out the Common App, which is available on commonapp.org. And what it is, it's a general application that kind of outlines who you are, and it takes both subjective and objective stuff into consideration. So you start off by giving your demographic information, like name, date of birth, stuff like that. And then it asks you about your test scores and grades, objective stuff like that. And then it gets into the subjective part, which is the subjective part, which would be your essay. There are 5 prompts, and you write a essay with a word limit of 650 words, where you answer the prompt. I chose the prompt that spoke about the transition from childhood into adulthood, and I wrote a story about that. And then at the very end, there is a section called additional information, where you can speak about whatever you want. I chose to write another mini essay about a certain accomplishment of mine. Now, with regards to a specific university, I can kind of speak about the University of Chicago here. And what there was for Chicago, there was, I applied early action, which means that I send in my application earlier and I receive a decision earlier. And so the deadline for that was November 1st. So I started working a long time in advance, because you need to get your school to send in your transcript and school report and a bunch of other things. And there's teacher recommendations involved, so you have to ask 2 teachers to write you a recommendation letter, 2 or more. And so I got my math teacher and my physics teacher to write me one. But then Chicago and other schools have their own specific essays, supplemental essays, and mini application that kind of adds on to the Common App. So you send them the Common App, and then you fill out this mini thing, and everything has to be in by November 1st. And so for Chicago, they had a general 650-word Why Chicago essay, where I spoke about why I fell in love with the school, the campus, the curriculum, stuff like that. So why Chicago is the right place for me. And then there is an optional essay about a certain book or piece of art or literature that you kind of connect with. And so I wrote that about a certain book, Big Fish, that I read. And then at the end, the infamous Chicago essay, this is unique to Chicago, is that they have a really weird and exotic prompt for the last essay. So I know Harvard has a different one, Stanford has a different one, all these schools have different ones, and then Chicago's kind of weird because they give you 25 options, and they're all really weird questions, like why is Wednesday hump day, stuff like that. And I chose to write the prompt find X. And I wrote about my view on the world and how it's pretty mathematical. And so X is like the variable in life kind of thing. And then you send all that stuff in by November 1st, and then you get a decision back by Christmas, which is December 25th. And on this December 25th decision, they can either tell you denied, which means that you're rejected. They can tell you defer, which means that they're deferring your application onto the regular decision deadline, so you'll hear back in April. Or accepted means that you're in. Now, accepted, unless you're going early decision, doesn't mean that you have to go there. It just means that you're able to go there. Now, to speak about certain pulls or hooks to get into college, I can kind of speak about from the Chicago perspective, is really be yourself. They don't want the cookie cutter perfect student. They want a human. So Chicago is also unique in this way because they don't look at your GPA as heavily as other schools. I know Harvard and Princeton and the rest of the Ivy Leagues, they really look at your grades heavily. Chicago looks at what kind of classes you're taking, and your essays. Your essays are a huge part. They kind of want to see who you are and why you're unique and how you're going to add to the campus. So tips for the U Chicago general essay would be genuine about what you really want to go to the school for. Don't say that it's number 4 on the rankings and that you really want to go to a high-ranked school. I talked about the curriculum and how, as someone who strives in small classrooms and in a really liberal arts curriculum, Chicago is the place for me. Also, if there's an optional essay like there was with Chicago, always write it. It really does help out your application a lot. And then with the supplemental essays in general, be yourself and find out what's unique about yourself and kind of play to it. And then there's extra things. So with Chicago, there's also an interview. Not every school has an interview, but I did. And so with the interview, that's kind of your chance to in person sell yourself to the school. My interviewer, we met at Starbucks and we just chatted over 2 hours. I would say ask the interviewer a lot of questions because they did go to the school. They are alumni interviewers. They can answer your questions. So it's a really good place to learn and show your interest as well. And then one of the reasons why I think I possibly got into Chicago is one of the hardest schools to get into in the country. I think one of the reasons why I did get into it is because when my admissions counselor came to the area to visit, I went to one of her events. I shook her hand, asked her questions. She got to know who I was. So the name Tal Zahavi wasn't just a name, there was a face to it, and she kind of knew who I was to begin with. So that really, I think, edged me up. So to summarize, to get into a school, I would say be yourself, find a hook and play to it, and then really in interviews and personal interactions with people who are alumni, sell yourself. And then obviously this is kind of out of your control once you already apply, but good grades, good test scores, and solid teacher recommendations.